Prior to the 19th century, cost control in manufacturing was not a complex matter. Goods were produced by individual artisans who simply had to sell their piecework for more than it cost them to make it. With the Industrial Revolution, for the first time, many laborers were brought together under one roof, and managerial accounting was born. But as manufacturing grew more complex, a demand arose for more detailed information about the efficiency of workers engaged in increasingly specialized tasks. A new breed of scientific managers, like Frederick W. Taylor, became interested not merely in what things actually cost, but in what they ought to cost. Taylor conducted time and motion studies to determine the fastest way to complete a task and developed engineering specifications to gauge the efficient use of raw materials. Many manufacturers were controlling their operations by measuring actual performance against these standards. The basic idea of evaluating manufacturing efficiency by comparing actual costs to budgeted or standard costs hasn't changed that much in 100 years. From healthcare to high-tech to hamburgers, many U.S. businesses use standard costs to measure their performance. Golfers shoot for par. Ball players strive to bat 300. Students go up against the SAT. Actors dream of winning the Oscar. In every walk of life, performance is measured against standards. Businesses, too, have standards. There are national and international standards for formats and specifications, as well as for quality and integrity. Internally, many businesses use cost standards for producing products and delivering services.
From a management accounting standpoint, standard costs are used to try to get a better idea of what causes variances between flexible budgets and actual results. What is it that causes the difference between what actually happened and what we would expect to have happened? So what we need standards for both the amount and the purchase cost of each input that we use.
VF Corporation employs cost standards to assist in planning and evaluating the manufacture of its products. Like most products, there are standard costs for direct materials, for direct labor, and for overhead. But setting standard costs is not a job for the accounting department alone.
We have many components of standard costs, and we have many different departments within our company that are involved with standard cost. From the components, we have the raw materials. We start with yarn, and then we have dyes and chemicals. Once you have the cost per pound of fabric, then you look at the consumption of fabric. We want to optimize the fabric consumption or utilization. So we look at how the different patterns are nested together within a marker to achieve maximum consumption. There is a labor standard that comes from Industrial Engineering Department. And what we look at there, first of all, is what is the technology employed. We have introduced a lot of automation, which has really helped lower the labor cost. We have to pinpoint what is the method and the machinery used for each operation, and then what is the amount of labor or man-hours required to complete each operation. And that becomes a labor standard. Once we have developed the standard time it takes to complete each operation, we also have wage rates, or what we call operator base rates. They vary by operation based on the skill level and the geographic area. For example, average wage rates could range from $7 an hour to, say, $9 an hour in sewing or assembly.
Once standard costs are established for direct materials and direct labor, then standard rates for overhead must also be established.
In our business, typically the overhead rate is calculated as a percentage of direct labor hours. Each cost center manager establishes how much direct labor and then how much supporting labor, and then other costs like supplies and operating equipment, along with the rent and utilities and some of those other typically fixed costs. And then we divide that by the volume that we're going to produce through the fabric mill that year. And that becomes our overhead standard.
Some companies set their standard costs according to ideal engineering standards, while others allow for a practical amount of waste in the process.
We build certain inefficiencies into our standards, expected inefficiencies that occur in the manufacturing process.
And when a negative variance occurs, you often hear manufacturing people say, well, it was a tight standard. And sometimes we do have a tight standard, and the standard may have to be relaxed or adjusted. What sort of variation we have on courses?
When an actual cost comes in at or near its standard, then that part of operations is assumed to be working more or less as it should. Managers can focus more of their attention on areas where there is a significant variance from standard costs, a practice known as management by exception.
An unfavorable variance draws more attention than a favorable variance, as you might imagine. But either way, a variance is a flag. It's not immediately necessarily a sign that one person is doing something wrong, but rather that's the flag that indicates that this area requires investigation.
In a standard cost system, variances can play a key role in performance evaluation.
Variances in our company are taken in a very serious manner by the cost center managers, by the division managers and directors, and our vice presidents and the president of our company.
Variances are only as good as the standards against which they are measured. And setting good cost standards is challenging, even for manufacturing veterans.
I think the toughest part is when we start to venture out into new products or new styles. And those are styles where we don't have experience. That's where we really have to use our best skills and our knowledge to estimate operations on new